In the wake of the European Court of Human Rights landmark judgment Bayatian versus Armenia, the Armenian government not only released imprisoned conscientious objectors, but began offering alternative civilian service. Two prominent human rights experts, Mr. Nils Muižnieks and Mr. Ričard Klejton, discuss how this right of conscientious objection to military service is now recognized as part of one's freedom of thought, conscience, and belief. These experts also consider the implications of acknowledging this right in its effect on national security and its need for global recognition.
Well, the current standard, I think, was enshrined in the Bayatian against Armenia judgment of the European Court of Human Rights, is that under Article 9 of the Convention, freedom of thought, conscience, and religion, there is a right to conscientious objection. And if somebody's beliefs prohibit them from doing military service, then forcing them to do this service is a violation of their freedom of religion, belief, and conscience.
The most important development has been the Grand Chamber decision of the European Court of Human Rights in relation to Armenia. It basically catapulted conscientious objection from being a relatively minor figure in the human rights world to being a much more significant one.
Almost every country now recognizes the right to conscientious objection, and there is a consensus on this Europe-wide, and this is why they took this path-breaking judgment. And I think the court was very far-reaching in recognizing that a consensus now exists, and this is no longer a matter for individual member states to decide. Human rights does not harm one's security, but enhances security. I very often hear the argument that implementing human rights is dangerous for security. I think we're seeing this now with the surveillance issues. We saw this with conscientious objection. So I would say that yes, of course, states have a responsibility to protect the security of their population, but they must do so while upholding human rights, and that there's no contradiction between the two.
And ultimately, that issue and how it plays out is decided by balancing the individual's rights against the rights of the community, the interests of the community, and coming to a proportionate balance. Clearly, there has to be scope to reject the invitation to be conscripted. There has to be space to act for an alternative. And that has to be done in a way which provides some protection for people with rights and views.
And I think that what we see now is as a dialogue works. Dialogue can lead to positive change, and that change does not harm anybody's security. It doesn't reduce anybody else's rights, but that it's good for Armenia and it's good for Europe.
The question of conscientious objection being part of an individual's right to express their thoughts is a universal point which ought to prevail in any part of the world. There's no reason why one should regard it as an inherently European. I mean, it's just an issue of principle, and the principle seems to me to have equal force wherever it applies.
So I'm hoping that this will have good echo effects, and that member states will be proactive and change their policies and not wait for additional judgments from the European Court of Human Rights.
The Bayatian judgment certainly indicates that any country has to rethink the way it addresses these things.
The viewpoint of the international community is clear. The right of conscientious objection to military service applies everywhere as part of one's freedom of thought, conscience, and belief. In practice, all but a small number of countries recognize this fundamental right. Even so, many are now in prison in Eritrea, Nagorno-Karabakh, Singapore, Turkmenistan, and more than 600 in South Korea. Jehovah's Witnesses look forward to the time when all respect the dignity of fellow humans and their conscience.